Welcome to Mill City Roasters in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm Dave Borton along with...
Joe Morocco.
Very good. Joe, it's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
That time of year, spring training is closing up. We'll be planting our seedlings. For those of you that are watching it off archive, we're in late March, so it's time to get the seedlings. What are you planting?
That's right. Unfortunately, I'm not planting anything this year.
How about green coffee? When have you planted it?
I haven't planted any green coffee either.
Will this green coffee sprout?
It should, yeah, actually. If you take good care of green coffee and the germ has not died, you can grow it just from where it sits. It's a seed.
Maybe that'll go into my seedling tray this year, and I'll tell you how it turns out. Today we're looking at our green coffee, Joe, on how do you choose it? When do you buy it? How deep do you go? What should you be buying? Should you be cupping it? So we've got a little bit of camera trouble here, and we're going to keep rolling right along. Joe, we've got Kenyans rolling in shortly. We've got Centrals that'll be pouring in. We've got Ethiopians that'll be coming in. Can you help me? When do I buy my coffees?
Because when you buy a green coffee, you know that if you have it on your shelf for more than like 6 months, for instance, it could start to fade and start to die.
How do you know when a coffee fades, Joe?
You can taste it. It'll start tasting papery. Your boisterous flavors in the coffee when you get it fresh are going to start to fade away. You'll notice that the life in the coffee kind of dwindles. Don't confuse that with just being bored with a coffee. Sometimes people, when you're roasting the same coffee for a month and month on end, you get kind of bored with it. It's important to not allow boredom to steer you, but to allow the integrity of the coffee. So having a score sheet to where you can actually detail what the notes in the coffee are, having a team that's tasting those coffees is really important.
Let's back up. Are you suggesting that coffee is an agricultural food product and it doesn't have a long shelf life?
Exactly. It's not a stone. Well, I guess it will be a stone if you let it sit around long enough, but it is a living, breathing creature, and it's waiting to germinate, and if it has to wait too long, it's just going to die. So using it while it's still fresh is really important.
Okay, so how do you store this stuff, Joe? What's the best way to go at it?
We really like to recommend that you store it in an environment that is not too hot, not too cold, and that doesn't change very much with humidity. So some type of climate controlled environment is really great. If it gets too hot and too cold, that will affect the way that the coffee is giving off its water, because there's a lot of moisture in a coffee, and that exchange of moisture equates to change in the coffee. And any change in green coffee is going to degrade the coffee, not improve the coffee. Gotcha. Once it's here in a country where you're going to be roasting it. So you don't want to see a lot of change. You want to see static coffee, and change is bad.
And how about humidity?
Humidity we like to see below 50% generally, and not too dry. If you get below 20%, that's usually too dry, and it'll sap the life out of the coffee.
Yeah, we talk to those that buy greens from us, and they're challenged by the furnaces in the in the winter time when the humidity is low. And likewise, as you know, we get some of these days, dog days we say up here, in August with that hydrometer screaming up to 90%.
That's right.
That'll diminish the quality of your coffee.
That's right. If you have to have it in a situation like that, you want to make sure that that situation is short-lived. So keep it in climate controlled. If you're working with an importer or working with a green coffee partner, you can usually store your coffee with them and then collect your coffee as needed, get shipments incrementally. So you can put your coffee on contract, have them hold your coffee, and then buy your coffee from them over time. That way your coffee, while it's held, nobody else can buy it, but it's also in a climate controlled situation.
Okay, so that's called a contract. You want to
Yes.
jump into, yes, already, Nick.
We have a quick question from Mike, wondering if GrainPro can help protect somewhat against temperature changes.
GrainPro cannot, well, let me repeat the question so our audience hears it. The question is, can GrainPro protect against temperature changes? And no, GrainPro is not a temperature controlled system. It's just a bag. It's a plastic polymer. If your coffee is in a GrainPro bag, that bag will protect against a lot of humidity and things like that. But if your coffee gives off a lot of its moisture in a really hot climate, it can actually start to grow mold and things like that in the GrainPro bag. I've seen a lot of GrainPro bags get opened and it's just full of mold. So it's important to not think about GrainPro as some kind of supernatural force that will protect against all things. Some coffees actually should not be in GrainPro. Decafs, for instance, some decafs will mold in a GrainPro bag because the water activity is so high in a decaf coffee.
Very good. That moves us on to the next section I wanted to talk about, Joe. How deep do I go? And here we've got 2-3 days a month where we teach Introduction to Commercial Coffee Roasting. I tell folks with decafs, I'll go about 6 months deep.
Okay.
With other coffees, I like to go about 9 months deep. Is that generally good advice?
It depends on the coffee, and I know that that is not the thing everybody wants to hear, but if you buy an Ethiopian coffee, a lot of times that Ethiopian coffee will last 9 months, 12 months. If you buy a Colombian coffee, there are some Colombian coffees that come in that are exquisite in the first month. By month 3, they're dead. So it just really depends on the coffee. It depends on the water activity of the coffee and how stable that green coffee is. A lot of that stability comes from how they dried the coffee at the farm, how dense that coffee is, how that coffee was shipped, what type of temperature change that coffee went through as it's crossing the oceans. So there are a lot of different things to it. So it's important to work with your partners who are helping you source that green coffee, not only to say, what coffee should I buy, but how long should I have that coffee? A really great strategy for green coffee buying is called buying for replace. What that means is you have a plan in mind not only for the coffee you're acquiring now, but also how are you going to replace that coffee with what and when?
Okay, I get you. It's not as simple as the formulaic approach I've been selling.
Well, it can be, but your formula needs a few more data points.
That's why you're here.
That's right.
Okay, good.
I'm your data.
How deep should they go, Joe? We've got people here that are watching that are roasting for both wholesale and retail accounts. Coffee might go south on them. How deep should they buy, and when should they buy?
So if you're buying coffees for your blend products, usually this is kind of how it works. You'll have a high quality coffee. That high quality coffee has the largest potential to drop off in its quality. So for a high quality coffee, I'm probably not going to go super deep because it's going to have more potential for failure.
I gotcha.
So for a micro lot coffee that you're brewing on your pour over methods or your really special expensive coffees, I would buy shorter so that they don't have the time to drop off. For my blends, though, I'm probably not going to be putting in 90-point coffees, 88-point coffees in my blends. It's probably going to be 85, 86. Those have a shorter amount to drop. Usually an 80-point coffee is 80 points, not because it has negative flavor characteristics, but because it's just kind of flat and dull. And that's usually where your coffees sag to if they are going to drop off. So the closer you get to that 80-point mark, the longer that coffee is going to last at that same flavor profile. So on your blend components, there are a couple of strategies here. One, going long allows your blend to stay consistent for a longer amount of time, so you're not constantly having to do all the work of changing your blend. And then two, you know that that coffee is not going to sag very much because it's already in the mid to lower 80s, most likely. And it's not a bad thing to buy an 83, 84 point coffee, especially if you're going to put it in a blend, because it could be, like I'm sure many of us have seen, a flavor profile that's kind of like a spider web, where you'll have body, acidity, sweetness, all of these different characteristics that build out this circle. Well, usually a lower quality coffee or a mid-range coffee will be high on one thing, like acidity, or high on body or something, but then the other sides will be kind of flattened. Well, you can take another coffee that has those attributes and plug it in to where your blend itself becomes a larger circle, but you're saving some money and you can go longer on those coffees by putting them together in a blend. If you do have the fortune of having a coffee that is affordably priced and that hits that 85, 86 mark, that you know it's not going to sag very much in its quality, but the circle is broadened out a little bit more, that would be a coffee I would probably go pretty deep in, because I would say this coffee can fill a lot of different situations. It's a flexible coffee. I can blend for espresso, I can blend for drip, I can use this as a single origin, and I know it's not going to drop off in quality very much. So looking for those coffees that are kind of workhorse coffees, as I call them, or coffees that are bargain coffees, not coffees that are the cheapest coffees in the toolbox, but coffees that can really do like punch above their weight class, is a really great way to hunt for coffees.
Joe, you've used the expression twice now, going long. Please explain that.
So when you are buying a commodity, there are actual commodity terms, long and short. When you go long on something, that means that you are going to have more than you sufficiently need for a certain amount of time, or you're going to have that particular product for a long amount of time. I think you use the term going deep on something.
Yes.
So deep and long would be the same kind of terminology. Shorting something means that you are going short on it. You don't have very much. So you're only buying it for a short amount of time, and you're going to use it up fairly quickly, hopefully.
Okay, good. Joe, we had a Costa Rican I bought from you. Doesn't matter what plantation. And when new crop came in, I immediately took that down. That coffee hadn't faded over 12 months. I mean, it was still kicking really good cups. I bet you we drank that in the shop for a total of 16, 17 months.
Yep.
And it never lost anything. Why is that? Just curious.
Some coffees are extremely good at holding up over time. To be honest with you, I generally find that natural processed coffees hold up much longer. And this is anecdotal, and I might get a lot of flack for this, but I've actually seen natural coffees that come in and they kind of start to sag, and then they get this second life where they get better, and then they'll eventually drop off.
We call that the flick.
Yeah. So they actually improve after a certain amount of time. I've seen this from naturals from Costa Rica. I've seen this from naturals from Ethiopia. So after they're here 5-6 months, all of a sudden you'll see an improvement in their cups.
Very
we actually
interesting.
have cupping data that supports this.
Very good. Besides your palate, Ian even agrees
Yes,
with you?
as a company, we agree.
There you
and
go.
our customers, a lot of our customers buying those coffees.
Good. So when you say go long, that may differ with my roasting business from your roasting business.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And so each person has to make that determination based on sales projection and what they're trying to accomplish with the coffees they're buying? Okay.
Yeah, and generally speaking, when you contract coffees with Cafe Imports, for instance, we like to go only about 4 months on most coffees that companies contract. And then we'll go 6 months on some of those more staple, like Brazil, Colombia blender coffees. But we tend not to go any more than 6 months, because if you have a coffee in our warehouse for 6 months and then you buy it and have it in your warehouse for 3 months or so, you know that at that point, that coffee's a year old.
Repeat that again for me. What What's Cafe Import's approach towards how long you guys have coffee?
So we try to get our coffee in and out as quickly as we can, because the faster we move through coffee, the less it's sitting on our shelf, and then if it's sitting on a customer's shelf,
I got that.
they can control that quality. But we try to contract our coffees for 4 months. So if you buy coffee from us and write a contract, you'll probably be told, if you try to contract it for 5 months, no, we can only do 4 months, unless it's like a large blender purchase.
Let's talk about harvest schedules. You haven't mentioned those at all.
Yeah.
You've got a good one on your website in the blogs, and I constantly go back to sweetmarias.com because not only do they have the harvest schedule, they've got the shipping schedule as well. Can you talk about how you use a harvest schedule?
Yeah, so a harvest schedule is going to be kind of in flux each year. So you want to think about those calendars as being a rough guideline or a rough estimate of where things normally are. With the way that the climate is lately, they've been shifting quite a bit from one country to another. But it helps you to project when you are going to be buying a coffee. For instance, in Ethiopia, they start harvesting in November. They usually stop harvesting in January-ish. You know that that coffee that's harvested in January is not going to be fully ready to ship from Ethiopia, probably until late February, early March. So then you know that that shipping time is another 6 to 8 weeks. And by the time that coffee is ready, you're looking at April for the first arrivals from Ethiopia. So then when you're projecting how you're going to buy, picking up really fresh Ethiopia in April is a good idea.
That's helpful, but what I found with some people that use harvest schedules, they treat it as a rigid map. When did Ethiopians come in last year?
The very first ones were late April for us, and then we were still getting Ethiopias through August.
Yeah, so understand that climate, understand that logistics can all impact that harvest schedule.
Politics.
There you go. Yemen, for
Strikes.
example, with the civil war, the wars in Yemen, we may not even get Yemens this year.
Yeah.
You have any
We
word
have
on
plans.
that? You have plans.
We have
all right.
plans for Yemen. We've seen strikes happen, at different ports around the world. In particular, last year we had a bad strike situation in Colombia. Sometimes you'll have a strike in a place like Panama. The Panama Canal will close down for a while. There's just so many different things.
So a lot of that's out of the importer's hands through the retailer's hands that come the 1st of June, I may or may not have fresh crop Costa Rican sitting on my shelves.
It's true.
Okay, good.
You should, though.
You promise?
Nope.
All right. Let's talk about, should I sample roast and cup before I buy from my importer? We're going to be talking about how people establish relationships with importers in a bit, but should I be sample cupping and roasting? Sample roasting and cupping this?
The easy answer is yes. If you're sample roasting and cupping, then you know 100% what you're buying. What I see a lot of people do when they start getting into sample roasting and cupping, however, is they'll call 20 different importers, get in 100 different samples for their one coffee that they're going to buy. They'll roast all these coffees, they'll cup all these coffees, they'll roast them again and cup them again, and they'll narrow down their field. And all this time is money. This is like you're churning through
For
so
everybody.
much profit for everybody.
Yes.
And along with that, the way that you're then picking those coffees is so deep into the minutia of the coffees. It could be your roast, it could be your water, it could be like a myriad of other things.
Your palate.
So it's really important to implement a strategy of sample roasting for checking what you are buying and working with an importer or a green coffee partner that you really trust, which that does take time. So as you're getting started, you may have to spend the time roasting a bunch and cupping a bunch and calibrating to the people that you want to work with. The customers that I work the best with, generally I have the best calibration with. So when they call and say, yeah, I'm looking for the next Costa Rica, I know exactly what Costa Ricas are going to fit into the profile that they're looking for. And so I can make a very small list of recommendations they can look over that list of recommendations and they can say, I think that this one Costa Rica is going to fit our needs. Costa Rica's come in, they cup that one Costa Rica and they check yes or no, does it fit our needs? That saves them so much time and energy, and then they have the best of the best because we haven't wasted a lot of time going through lists. And while you're going through that cupping process, you have to remember that these coffees are being sold. So while you're cupping and trying to figure out and looking at all these different coffees, I'm busy on the phone trying to sell that list of coffees to other people. And the companies that trust me the most are going to be the companies that buy first and buy the best stuff based on my recommendations. And that's just not me. That's anybody that's selling green coffee. That's going to be the case.
Joe, let's go back to calibration of pallets. I've worked with Cafe Imports and several other importers for years. I've made it a practice that any coffee I'm provided a sample on, here's a Colombian washed coffee. When I roast and cup that, I'm going to turn my notes back to you, Matt or Adrian. What percentage of your buyers are doing that for you?
Probably 5.
That's it?
Yeah, probably about 5%. We just recently did a survey, and about 40% of our customers don't have a sample roaster and don't cup coffee.
Well, we sell them. We've got the 500-gram sample roaster right over Joe's left shoulder, and we'd be glad to sell that.
Yeah, it's important. It's important to cup your coffee. Also, the other cool thing about roasters like this is that this doesn't only serve as a sample roaster to determine a quality in a coffee, but you can also begin the profiling process with a very small amount of coffee so that you can then take it to your larger roaster and not have to go through a whole bunch of product. A product like this will make you money back in no time.
Pay for itself.
It will pay for itself in no time, I promise you. If you get a good sample roaster that is profilable and have that work very closely with the other roasters that you have that are larger in the same kind of lineup, you can take this data and you can apply it not directly, but almost directly. And as you practice more and more, directly apply the information that you get from this to your large roaster.
Know your roaster, right?
That's exactly right.
What kind of calibration or information from your customer is helpful to you to calibrate?
Well, it's tough. You have to have, from my perspective, I have to really know what a customer is saying when they say, I'm using this coffee in this format, or I need a coffee that's going to taste chocolatey at a dark roast or at a light roast or something like that. So I'm listening for very small cues in what a customer is saying to try to figure out what coffee best suits them. But the more clear that you can be on your needs, what kind of cost you need, how long you need the coffee to last you, what your application is going to be. Is it going to be espresso? Is it going to be drip? Is it going to be blend? Is it going to be single origin?
Can I take it into second crack?
Yep.
All those kinds of things. Well, it stand up. Like we've got a Brazil from JC Coffee in Seattle right now. And when I talked with him, I told him I needed a coffee that could stand on its own. It's probably one of the best Brazils I've ever had. Yet I can turn right around and use that for a base in an espresso blend. And when I expressed that to him, he was able to deliver me a coffee that he knew I could use for those dual purposes. Yep.
Yeah, and buying dual purpose coffees and again, those workhorse coffees is so important. Sometimes basically a really high quality coffee should serve well in all different formats. However, a really high quality coffee will also generally be very expensive. So if you can find a workhorse coffee that also satisfies that expense need, you're golden.
Very good. Joe, tell me, you're in the sales business as an importer. Let's say somebody is new to buying from an importer. They've graduated from buying greens, and now they're going to go from us, and now they're going to go into buying a 60, 69, 70 kilo bag from Cafe Imports. how should a person establish relationship with you? Be it you, Royal Oakland, whomever, how is it best to work with an importer?
Yeah, well, as an importer, some of the first questions that I ask are, what size machine are you working on? What kind of machine are you working on? That information tells me a little bit about the demographic that I'm working with. Like, are you going to be buying 2 bags a month? So we need to find you like some really, really good coffee that also 2 months from now is going to still be around. Or are you going to be turning over a pallet every month? What exactly are those needs? Not just because of anything price related, but because of availability related. Any information that you can share about your company, your ethos, your ethics. Do you need organic? Do you need fair trade? What is it that you're trying to accomplish with your company? Then we can start down the road of peeling back all of the extra coffees that are going to be meaningless to you and to your buying strategy, and narrow in to the coffees that are specifically important for you to look at. And then when we communicate, we can focus in on those coffees and those coffees alone and save you a lot of time and energy, especially if you're going to be cupping through stuff. If you tell me I'm just looking for delicious coffees that score 85 and above and that are, I don't have any kind of price range, then I may be able to send you 100 samples, and that's not helpful to you and it's not helpful to me. So the more that you can narrow in on what it is you're looking for, the better. And as you start to taste those coffees, sharing openly what it is you like about the coffee and don't like about the coffee. Even if you don't have a cupping protocol and you're not sample roasting and all of that, as I get to know you as a customer, or as your sales rep at another company gets to know you as a customer, then we can start tailoring coffees that suit your particular flavor preferences. Everybody is a little bit different in the coffees that they like to buy, and those coffees really match a certain type of personality, and none of those personalities are good or bad. They're just all different. So as I get to know your personality and how you like to buy and what coffees best suit your brand and vision, then I can narrow those coffees in extremely quickly and well.
So what you're suggesting is that a little bit of time up front
Yes.
reaps dividends, and while it may be time consuming up front, long term, it's a time saver.
That's right.
Very
I
good.
really like long phone calls in the beginning. Sometimes I'll even Skype with the customer in the beginning so we can have some face-to-face. And don't ever feel like you're too small to take time with an importer. Yeah, never feel like you're too small. If an importer is making you feel like you're too small, find an importer that does not do that. You are not too small if you're buying green coffee. There are coffees for you, and we importers are privileged to be able to work with roasters that want to take the time and put in the attention to making our coffees taste great.
Which raises a question. Let's say I've got a pallet coming. Is my freight the same with 4 bags on it as it would be with 10? Do I need to fill that pallet up to diminish my cost per pound on shipping and transportation?
The answer is different. So if you are within certain ranges of the warehouse that you're shipping from, there are going to be certain price break points. So you may be able to get a pallet with 1 bag on it for $100, and then a pallet with 5 bags on it for $150, and a pallet with 10 bags on it for $200. Well, that pallet with 10 bags on it, even though it's $200, it's more expensive. If you break it down to being 1,500 pounds for $200, and then do the math for how many cents per pound you're paying for shipping, it's a whole lot cheaper than shipping 1 bag. We have shipping rates to certain areas of the country that are a little further away. So if you are in certain places, it's 10 cents a pound on a full pallet. If you have 9 bags on a pallet, it's going to cost you a whole lot more than if you have 10 bags on a pallet. So it's important to get quotes, to work with a company that has the ability to help you get those quotes, to make sure that whenever you're shipping that coffee, that before the coffee leaves the warehouse that you're shipping it from, that you're that the company that you're purchasing it from has put on your bill of lading that you need a lift gate, or that you need a call ahead, or that you need help unloading and bringing it into your warehouse. All of these things add costs, but they also make it a lot easier. And if your coffee shows up to your door and you don't have a lift gate because you didn't want to spend money on a lift gate and you didn't tell the importer that you needed a lift gate, then that truck driver is not going to unload your coffee and they're going to drive away, and then you're going to get charged with a redelivery fee, which a lift gate's $30 to $50. Redelivery could be $250. All of these things matter. So the more information you can provide about your delivery situation, the better. Also, it's very important that you understand who is responsible for what if something goes wrong in your shipment. Things go wrong all the time. So once it leaves our warehouse, it's kind of in the hands of the shipping company. At Cafe Imports, we stand behind the coffee that we ship. So if something does happen in transit, we like to arrange the freight on behalf of our customers, so then we can go to bat on behalf of our customers.
Makes sense.
If we're shipping 5,000 bags with a shipping company in a month, then they're a lot more apt to respond to us positively than if you're shipping one pallet every 3 months. So having a partner in that shipping game is very, very important. And we can also help save on rates, as can other importers. The other thing that I'll say is inspect your pallet when it arrives. Inspect the coffee, make sure that there's no punctures, make sure that it doesn't look like it's been rewrapped. On our pallets, we have stickers and information that shows that the pallet is the initial wrap. So if anything looks like it's been rewrapped, then you know that something happened to that pallet in transit. And it's really important, if it looks rewrapped, that you unwrap it, take every bag off that pallet, as painstaking as that is, inspect everything before you let that truck driver leave your premises. If there is any damage, that damage needs to be marked on your bill of lading. You need to sign that bill of lading with that damage mark. You need to have the truck driver initial by where that damage is, take pictures of the damage, send the damage and the bill of lading copy to the person that did the arrangement of your shipment, so that you can get that covered. It's very important.
Yeah, all the years that I was selling greens to home roasters before I started working at Mill City Roasters, moved 100,000 pounds of coffee. Maybe I was just lucky. I never once had any damage.
You were lucky.
Very, very fortunate. Easy as well to work with you at Cafe Imports, the logistics department. I knew exactly when it was going out, when it would get delivered. I was in good hands. Nick, did you have any questions coming in off the internet?
Just a few, but you touched on it a little bit. Someone was wondering if there was any storage length difference between processing methods, and you had touched on that.
Joe, you want to talk about decaf, natural, semi-washed, washed, shelf life differences?
Yeah, there will definitely be some shelf life differences. I would say that the science is still out, so it's pretty anecdotal for me to say that one coffee will last longer than another categorically. The main coffees that I've seen last the longest have been natural processed coffees, and honeyed processed coffees lasting close to that. Wash processed coffees fading fairly quickly. But there also could be other things that are skewed with that, since a lot of the natural coffees that we buy are very, very high-end naturals. It could be that the quality is intact there too. So it could be correlation, it could be causation, I'm not really 100% sure. The primary thing that I would point to is taste your coffee, don't buy too long. If you end up needing more of a particular coffee or needing a coffee to go long, know that the longer you go with the coffee, the higher risk you have of that coffee fading. Nobody can tell the future on a particular coffee. We can guesstimate, we can have a more and more educated guess on a coffee, and that's where tools like water activity and moisture content, understanding those, and then using GrainPro, having your facility be climate controlled, those help with that, but nothing can tell the future.
Very good, Joel. That was a good wrap-up, a good summary. Before we close out, Oh, did you have more questions, Nick?
I just wanted to note, because you didn't know the name earlier, that was the La Ocostena from Costa Rica.
That's correct.
That lasted us so long.
Yes, yes.
It was a,
How did you remember that?
because I drank it happily for almost a year and a half.
It was good.
It was, and it was, we took it off the shelf, it was free. So,
Yes, Nick is talking about a Costa Rican that we drank for a year and a half, and it just never lost a step. Good summary, Joe. I want to talk about 3 coffees as we close out. We've got a Brazil Natural in from JC Coffee in Seattle, fresh crop. It's an excellent, clean, natural that can be a dual service purpose of both espresso and standing on its own. Take a look at that. As well, we're getting to the end of the Hambela estate, a natural from Ethiopia. And if you don't buy it, we're going to drink it here in the shop. It is a wonderful cherry natural, and I'm very, very sensitive to natural coffees. When they get overly fermented, I can't get there. But this is one I could drink every day. And the third one is Joe's Red Marcaja. We don't know what'll come out of Yemen this year, so if you want to jump on any Yemen coffee, I think we're down to our last bag. So with that, it's a wrap. Joe, it's good to work with you as
Nice
always.
working with you, sir.
And that was how to choose your greens. See you next month.
Bye.
bye.